Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are very excited to host this press conference and talk about this great opportunity coming to Salt Lake City next year. I want to go ahead and tell you who's going to be speaking this morning and in what order. We will not be doing an open forum Q&A, but all of the speakers you see on stage this morning will make themselves available for one-on-one interviews and questions afterwards. So first this morning we're going to hear from Mayor Jackie Biskupski, followed by Maher Nasser, who is the Director of the Outreach Division with the Department of Public Information with the United Nations, followed by Franz Kolb, who is the Director of International Trade and Diplomacy for the Governor's Office. We'll also hear from Erin Mendenhall. She's the Salt Lake City Council Chair, followed by Ahmed Corbett, who is a Director in the Department of Public Affairs with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And last but certainly not least, we'll hear from John Price, former U.S. Ambassador. So without further ado, welcome to the stage, Mayor Jackie Biskupski.
Well, thank you, everyone. This has been in the making for quite some time now, and it's exciting to be standing in front of you doing this announcement. I do want to thank a few people who are in the audience today. Elder Richardson is with us, and Lou Kramer, who is going to be helping us with this endeavor. I see Greg Miller is in the room, Senator Luz Escamilla. All of you certainly matter and are, I'm very proud that you showed up today for this moment in time. We certainly have a community that loves to come together and really showcase who we are and the rich cultural experience that one can have in coming to Utah and experiencing this place we call home. Next August, Salt Lake City will make history right here in the Salt Palace when we welcome the United Nations NGO Conference to Utah. This is one of the largest gatherings the United Nations hosts each year, and this will be the first time in its 68-year history that this conference will take place on U.S. soil. Truly a historic moment for Salt Lake City, for our state, and of course, our nation. The United Nations NGO Conference is a gathering of the world's non-governmental agencies to share ideas and best practices to help solve the world's most pressing issues. When I attended the conference last year, this past August, discussions included climate change, sustainable infrastructure, food security, and health. I had the opportunity to join a panel and speak about the critical role that women must play in our society and focused on empowering younger women and girls to seek change in their local communities. With our long history of community building, empowerment, volunteerism, there is no question that Salt Lake City is the best place for the world's NGOs to reiterate the mission and values of the United Nations, a mission of peace and security for all people. Since we announced this incredible opportunity, I have been truly grateful for the outpouring of support we have received from the NGO community here in Utah. As the headquarters of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Salt Lake City and Utah are truly centers of global humanitarian work. I have often said that caring for those seeking refuge in one way or another is part of who we are as Utahns. And whether we trace our Utah history back to handcarts or ski trips like me, this tradition is something we pass from generation to generation. This is most evident in the consistent ranking of Utah and Salt Lake City as the best places for volunteerism. And on several issues, the work we are doing right here in Salt Lake City is helping set the standards for how U.S. cities can address critical issues they are facing. From doing our part to address climate change with an unprecedented plan to shift to 100% renewable energy, to working collaboratively with state, county, and nonprofit partners to create a more sustainable and life-affirming model of homeless services. Salt Lake City is leading the way through innovation and compassion. I am excited to welcome our partners with the United Nations, including Maher Nasser, Director of Outreach for the United Nations Department of Public Information. Mr. Nasser will be working with us to ensure 2019 is the most productive conference in the history of this conference. I also want to take a moment to recognize Utah Valley University, particularly Baldomero Lago, who had the dream to bring this conference to Utah. Thank you for picking up the phone and calling me. It has been a journey that I have enjoyed immensely. And your dream, my friend, is coming true. In all that we do in Salt Lake City, my focus has been building a city for everyone. What better way to do that than to invite the world to our city to experience who we are as a community? We are proud to welcome the United Nations NGO Conference to Salt Lake City to not only show all that we are doing, but to learn from those who are leading the effort in other parts of the world, helping to create a more resilient and sustainable city for everyone. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. This is my first visit to Salt Lake City and Utah, and I'm very honored and excited to be speaking with you, and I'm very grateful to the Mayor and all of the partners that have made this dream possible. In the UN Department of Public Information, we believe that when the world pays its attention to the United Nations, when world leaders gather in September, it's an important moment, but it shouldn't be the only one. We remind ourselves and we remind everybody that the words of the Charter of the United Nations start with, "We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save the future generations from the scourge of war, are determined to build better and more secure societies." And we, the peoples, extends beyond governments. It includes civil society, it includes local government, private sector, NGOs, faith groups, academics, institutions. So the conference that the department has been co-hosting with NGOs since the creation of the department back in the late 40s has always taken place in New York up to 2008. And then for logistical reasons, we had to take it out of the city of New York. It went to Paris, to Mexico City, to Melbourne, to Bonn, to Gyeongju in Korea, and last year we had it again in New York. The value and focus of the conference have also shifted after 2015. In 2015, world leaders came together in New York and adopted what is known as the Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030, some of the most ambitious goals that we have seen being agreed to by all world leaders. They are not political goals. They are goals meant to secure our future, to live in peace, in prosperity between different nations, but also at peace with the planet. And I think as we work to improve our prosperity as humans, we need to make sure that we are not doing that at the expense of sustainability of the planetary resources on which we live. We only have one planet. There is no planet B. There is no plan B. So the issues that the Honorable Mayor spoke about, climate change, environmental degradation, cities, and what happens within those is core. And finding solutions for those cannot happen by only one part of what constitutes humanity, governments. We need to work on this together, and our conferences bring all these elements in one place. trying to seek and work together for solutions to guarantee that while we are working to secure our current population, we need not forget the needs of the future. So building safe, secure, inclusive, and sustainable cities, resilient and sustainable cities, is something that a lot can be learned from one to the other. So when Salt Lake City and the mayor came to us and offered to host this conference, we aligned it with Sustainable Development Goal number 11, which is about building safe, resilient, inclusive, and sustainable cities. And is an opportunity to also, and I think this is an idea we would like to pursue, to invite all the mayors of the cities that we have held the previous conferences to join us here in Salt Lake City next year. To achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, we cannot just leave it to governments, because this is on all of us, whether we are private sector, whether we are academics, whether we are universities or individuals. We have to work together to ensure that as we build prosperity, we should not leave anybody behind, and that includes the planet and the planetary resources. I have, in the last 2 days, met with many people from the city, from the governor's office, from the county, from the civil society, from the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, LDS Charities, Catholic Community Services, and others who are working and can show an example of how communities can work together. And I think this learning by showing an inclusivity and building resilience and self-reliance is something that Utah and Salt Lake City can show others. And we think that the conference is going to be a landmark for us moving forward, building a safe and prosperous future on a sustainable earth. The conference also comes 1 month before Secretary General holds a climate summit in September. And I think in that climate summit, the Secretary General is not inviting world leaders from all walks of life to come and listen to what the problem is. He's inviting them to come and talk about what their commitments and what they are doing to change the reality of what we're doing. Science is clear. Science is telling us that unless we act and act fast, we are going to be in big trouble. The UN Environment Program just released a report, the emissions report, that is saying that unless we actually quadruple our emission reduction targets by 2030, we will not meet the 2 degrees centigrade, let alone the 1.5 degrees centigrade. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I think from the spirit of what I have seen, we can do it together. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I just want to dispel a rumor. I did not attend the game between BYU and the University of Utah yesterday with my voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you. I'm seeing many friends here that have been in support of international trade, international hosting, whether it is Mr. Scott Anderson from Science Bank, who is here, who should be recognized, or many others that over the years have been on trade missions with us. I still remember, ladies and gentlemen, in 1995 being in Budapest, Hungary, with about 400 Utahns standing in the Hilton Hotel when it was announced that Utah was supposed to get the 2002 Winter Olympic Games. I have never seen more love in my entire life than in that room. So it was really exciting. And we did get the games, and we will never forget our slogan of the Olympic Games, "The world is welcome here." And so this is also, and we have continued this slogan for the many years since the Olympics, and will continue to do that afterwards. So it is an honor to be here today as Utah's Director for International Diplomacy and Protocol to herald another unparalleled opportunity for our state to welcome the international community to Utah. The 68th United Nations Global Communications NGO Conference. I remember 4 years ago I received my first phone call from the United Nations, and now it is becoming the reality, and I'm very grateful for the mayor and her commitment to this event. consistently ranked as the youngest, fastest growing and best place for business, Utah is a superb example what states can do right when we work together within and outside our borders to ensure the sustainability of our citizens locally and globally. I would like to just mention one thing that I think will be important for this conference. We have many, we are the #1 state in the United States as far as volunteerism is concerned. And so this conference, when these guests from all over the world will come, I'm sure that Utahns which will reach out and will volunteer and help making sure that our international visitors will feel welcome. I remember during the Olympics, we needed 25,000 volunteers, and there was a little advertisement on one Sunday in 2 local newspapers, and by Tuesday evening there were 45,000 people that volunteered for the Olympics, and we actually had to come up with a test to see who qualified to be a volunteer for the Olympics. So I hope we see the same enthusiasm when it comes to this conference. I should also mention that we are, when it comes to international hosting, we in the governor's office with our many colleagues, whether it's the Utah Council for Citizen Diplomacy or the World Trade Center or the city of Salt Lake and the various cities, we host over 100 delegations from all over the world in a year. And we are so grateful for our legislature and their commitment in helping us, our educational institutions. And I also would like to recognize Dr. Baldomero Lago and his vision and leadership and tenacity in bringing this conference here. So I'm very grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud and honored to join my friends in Utah here in welcoming these delegations and this conference here. So on behalf of the Governor's Office of Economic Development, we look forward to our collaboration and to a very successful event in August of 2019. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. On behalf of the Salt Lake City Council, we welcome the United Nations and the world with open arms, with excitement. And we recognize as the capital city that faces unique challenges in our state of Utah, that these challenges are not unique to our state, to our city, and that as we grow at an exponential rate as a world population, our problems do too. And the opportunity for us to reinvent the wheel is not efficient or useful for any city in the country or in the world. And so to be able to bring these kind of conversations that confront real issues and come up with solutions in a collaborative worldwide conversation is an incredible opportunity for us to host here in Salt Lake City and participate. I also hope and encourage our residents to watch as this conference unfolds and as they were just invited to participate, to volunteer, and to plan on attending next August. As Salt Lake City, as the leader in sustainability, I want to recognize our Director of Sustainability, Vicki Bennett, who has been leading that charge for a long time for Salt Lake City, and has helped us be a forerunner, not only in the state but in the nation, with things, as our mayor mentioned, around energy development and our partnership with Rocky Mountain Power to ensure that our values of sustainability and confronting and addressing climate change are addressed through our contracts with our power provider. So thank you for your leadership there. But we get to continue these conversations on a broader level with the world community. And as Salt Lake City addresses our local issues, I think we'll be able to bring some of those conversations to the table around human trafficking. Salt Lake City is the crossroads of the West with I-15 and Interstate 80, and therefore we're wonderful for economic development in many regards, but we also have a lot of social issues and humanitarian issues that come with these types of economies. Salt Lake City recently commissioned a needs assessment to look at the human trafficking survivor population in our city so we can begin to address it on an effective and more systemic level. And I applaud our mayor for supporting that effort and our Salt Lake City Council for helping provide the funding along with our district attorney, Sim Gill, to look at that population more closely. It's something we haven't done before. And these are the ways that we as a city are addressing not only environmental sustainability, but the sustainability of our population. As we grow, do we leave people behind to make room for the growth that is easier for us to live with and look at? Or do we dig in and get to the issues that are inherent to any city, anywhere in the world, and start to grow as a people? And I think that's the direction Salt Lake City is going. We have been going for a long time, and our partners at the state, our non-governmental partners, and now our international partners with the United Nations stand beside us, and I'm grateful for that. So on behalf of the Salt Lake City Council, we will do all that we can to support the efforts needed to make this conference a success, and we look forward to hosting the world in August next year. Thank you.
Good morning. I leaned over after the first 2 or 3 speeches. I leaned over to the city council chair and said, "Well, there goes my talk. How about yours?" Your Excellency, I feel for you. Follow me. Good morning, everyone. Mayor Biskupski, Franz Kolb representing Governor Herbert, Dr. Lago, and colleagues, partners on the organizing committee. I'm pleased to be here with all of you and the entire team supporting this event. As has been said, my name is Ahmed Corbett, and I'm delighted to represent the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Latter-day Saint Charities at this news conference. I join the others and all of you in welcoming Meher Nasser and Felipe Capo of the United Nations Department of Public Information, who with Jeff Brez, their colleague, are becoming much closer friends to our community. Welcome here. In 2019, Salt Lake City will be host to the largest, most diverse international crowd here since the 2002 Winter Olympic Games. Based on previous global NGO conferences, it's estimated that roughly 3,000 to 6,000 individuals will gather to this city and state. They will be associated with some 300 to 500 NGOs and will represent approximately 100 nations. The 68th United Nations Global Communications NGO Conference will be historic for the UN, as has been said, and for Salt Lake City, but also it'll be historic for the nation. Because this important annual event has had no U.S. venue beyond the UN campus in New York, as has been noted, this conference will also be historic for the United States, and we therefore have our city, our state, and our nation counting on us in Salt Lake City to get it right on this historic first and to set a powerful precedent. In my view, the leadership is remarkably capable, and if the unity, good faith, and friendship are any indication, we're going to have a monumental event. As a UN-affiliated entity, Latter-day Saint Charities applauds the city for hosting this worldwide conference. In 2017, Latter-day Saint Charities helped our brothers and sisters not of our faith in some 191 countries, alleviating suffering and seeking to make a real difference in millions of lives. We enthusiastically join city leadership and other supporters and partners in welcoming our friends from many of these same countries to Salt Lake City and the state of Utah next year. In the afterglow of Thanksgiving, let me express special gratitude to Mayor Biskupski for your critical role in securing this unique opportunity for Salt Lake City to be once again on the national stage and a global destination. You assembled the right delegation at the right time, led it to UN headquarters in New York, and returned successfully. Finally, I'd like to express gratitude and admiration on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its leaders and Latter-day Saint Charities for the people of this city and state. Your contributions to the vibrancy and spirit here are impressive and unique. As you know, the focus of this conference will be, and has been said, as Mr. Nasser said, will be Sustainable Development Goal 11, which calls for sustainable cities and communities. I have to believe this area was chosen, at least in part, for its example in this regard. Sustainable cities and communities don't just happen. Urban atrophy is more the rule in many cases. Indeed, SDG 11 exists precisely to help address this intransigent challenge in cities and communities around the world. It may sound simplistic and obvious, but in my estimation, cities and communities are sustained first and foremost by the engagement of their denizens who are willing to give of themselves to maintain their communities. The people of Salt Lake City and Utah are renowned for this spirit. We recently heard from Governor Herbert that Utah is number one in the nation for volunteerism, and that the second place state is far behind. So many thanks to the people for your example and spirit that makes Salt Lake City truly a city on a hill. Thank you.
Get my glasses on. Good morning. It is a great honor for Salt Lake City to host the 68th United Nations DPI NGO Conference in August 2019. This will be the first time, as noted, that this premier event will be held outside of the United Nations headquarters in New York in another American city. The UN conference, however, has been held internationally in other venues that are, such as Paris, Mexico City, Melbourne, Bonn, Gwangju, South Korea, and it's really an honor for Salt Lake to be among that group. The goal of the UN conference is to attract at least 4,000 or more attendees for the public and from the public and private sector, and several hundred NGOs that operate in more than 100 countries. The conference is slated to bring together UN and NGO leadership, civil society, academics, other interested parties, and the media to discuss global issues. Salt Lake City was chosen because of its humanitarian work being undertaken by many Utah NGOs, charitable foundations, and faith-based organizations with a global reach. I attended City College of New York during the completion of the United Nations headquarters, a beautiful edifice dedicated to peace and humanitarian issues around the world. A life-changing summer geology field course brought me to Salt Lake City, where I graduated from the University of Utah in 1956. Several years later, I met Maurice Warshaw, the founder of Grand Central Stores, who was involved in a number of humanitarian organizations, including CARE, UNICEF, and the UN World Food Program. He espoused 3 phases in one's life: learning, earning, and giving back. He became my mentor and a business client and a very close friend who guided me into early on philanthropy. In 1970, just a few years after independence for a number of African countries, my wife Marcia and I joined Maurice and his wife Inez on a humanitarian mission to 4 African countries: Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Ethiopia, where food security and healthcare issues were of great concern. Hunger, starvation, and maternal health had become a major crisis. The UN was there to help the Africans to survive. The UN development teams operate in many African countries today, undertaking the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, which are also known as the Global Goals. They include eradication of poverty, improved health care, universal access to education, job creation, solving economic inequality, protecting the planet, democratic governance, conflict resolution, and ending violence against women and children. The UN also provides support to governments to integrate these goals into their national development plans and policies. I served as U.S. ambassador to 3 African nations from 2002 and 2005 and worked very closely with UNDP staff there. Their aim was to make a difference and improve people's lives. The goal today is no different, except maybe more challenging in some areas because of ongoing in-country conflicts and the spread of terrorism, a similar problem in a number of countries around the world. I also became acquainted with a number of NGOs, many working with limited resources, but had the same goals of making a difference in people's lives. NGOs are to be commended for their achievements. It is truly an honor for Salt Lake City to host this United Nations conference. Reports indicate that there are over 65,000 refugees and over 400,000 first-generation immigrants living in Utah from over 30 countries. Utahns have a big heart and a caring for the less fortunate population in our society. Many of the charitable organizations are active worldwide and involved in a number of humanitarian causes. The United Nations has chosen well in selecting Salt Lake City to host the first ever DPI NGO conference outside of New York. Mayor, I appreciate you asking me to be a participant in this conference. And thank you very much.
So real quick, I want to say thank you to the folks who are really doing the legwork behind the scenes to make this come to fruition. Scott Beck, who is hosting us here today, Felipe Capo, who is with the United Nations, Ben Collender and Annie Davis from the Salt Lake City Department of Economic Development, Chris Redgrave, who is helping on the financing, and then Tom Love, who I'm not seeing, but I see staff that are here from Love Communications that will be helping us spread the word across this country and around the world to make sure that we have the best conference ever. So thank you to all of you who have stepped up to lead and doing all the hard work. I want you to know we appreciate that as well. Thank you.